I'll open the April 28th, 2014 regular City Council meeting. First order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll adopt the agenda. Don, any changes?
Mayor and Council, 2 changes to tonight's agenda. Number 4, visitors presentation. There will not be a presentation from the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. And under 5, the consent agenda, I would like to remove item A as the demolition of the property located at 7948 Victoria Drive.
Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the amended agenda. The next item on the agenda is the open forum. It's an opportunity for citizens to address the council on the topics not on the current agenda. Does anybody wish to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda, which now only includes the minutes of the workshop and the city council meeting. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the amended consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the minutes. Next item is item A under item 6, approve the payment of the bills.
I move approval.
Your Honor, the next item on the agenda would be the demolition of the...
It was removed.
If you remove something from the consent agenda,
Oh,
it just goes to the...
Forgive me. The item, Joe, hold off on
Yep.
paying the bills. The next item on the agenda truly is the demolition of the property located at 7948 Victoria Drive.
Mayor and members of the City Council, before you tonight, we've received 3 quotes for the demolition of the Johnson property. Staff is recommending that the City Council award the contract to THN Enterprises for a total amount of $12,250. The other bids were for $14,500, and the high bid was $19,500.
Anything to discuss there? It's quite a spread from the...
Yeah, I think it's a good bid. We've already completed the asbestos abatement. The next step is to demo the building, remove the trees, and prepare the site for development. So that work is ongoing.
Comments?
Question, how does the total demolition cost compare to the expectation of the amount that we had planned in our budget?
Councilmember Striegel, that amount is about what we had expected. I think the big number, or kind of the unknown at this point, really is the soil corrections, which we'll get a better handle on that once we remove the building.
When do you plan to demo?
Mayor and Council, and tonight, for instance, the fire department's going to be training in there, so we can talk about that later. But the expectation is we will do this the week of May 19th.
Anyone wish to make a motion?
I move we approve the demolition of 7948 Victoria Drive, awarding the bid to THN Enterprises in the amount of $12,250.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the demolition of 7948 Victoria Drive. Now, Joe.
Are you going to bring it up?
Payment of the bills.
I move approval of the claims roster, April 28th, 2014, in the amount of $151,220.52.
Any discussion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the claims roster. Donations.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept donations with gratitude from an anonymous donor in the amount of $1,000 designated to Concerts in the Park.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved that very generous donation, and as Tom suggested, we're grateful. Next, there's a public hearing for an easement at Lake Wasserman Woods. Don?
Yeah, Mayor and members of the City Council, the public hearing has been noticed, and what staff is recommending is that the mayor and council opens a public hearing and continues it until May 12th, 2014.
Is there any particular reason why?
Holly, do you want to respond to that, please?
Mayor and council, as part of the final plat for Wasserman Lake Woods, they've requested vacation of an existing easement. We're working with the developer on that. They've asked to table that until May 12th.
Any discussion or questions from the council? Can I have a motion, please, to open the public hearing?
I
So
move-
moved.
Oh,
Lonnie?
so moved.
Don?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've opened the public, I'll open the public hearing with the purpose of continuing it until May 12th, 2014. Can I have a motion, please, to close the public hearing? No?
No, just leave.
Just continue.
Just
Till May
continue.
12th, that's correct.
Okay.
I move that we continue the open public hearing until May 12th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've continued the public hearing until May 12th. Any other unfinished business, Don?
None, Your Honor?
Any new business?
No.
Reports of the city manager.
Mayor and council, what I would like to do tonight is just give a very brief update on where we stand with the evaluation with the possible relocation of the Public Works facility. Holly, would you mind just pulling up that map, please? And this is just to put things into perspective, really. Can you enlarge it a little bit? Since I'm visually impaired. So, Mayor and Council, what this shows is kind of an aerial photo of the site that we own on Bavaria Road, and it includes the two building locations. So they're on, well, okay, that's good. They're on top of each other. So the building footprint that is furthest to the east was the location of the original proposed building that was cited by Architectural Alliance. And the building that's closer to the road was the one that was proposed, and the location is based primarily from a budget consideration standpoint. So the work that's going on right now is really a couple of evaluations. The first evaluation really is to look at the increase in cost in moving the building back to the original location. So there's civil engineering work that needs to be done, some utility work. We're also looking at the implications from a stormwater management perspective. The building in the original proposed location would require the addition of a stormwater pond. We're also looking at the development of a landscaping plan, which Hartman is putting together to show how the 278 trees that the city will purchase on the site in order to provide some additional screening. So we have professionals working on this. So the Hartman, from a landscaping perspective, we have our civil engineer and other professionals working on it from a civil perspective. And that work is currently being done. We expect to give a full presentation, primarily based on alternatives and costs at our May 12th meeting. With that, I'm open for questions. Ann, is there anything or Holly, that you'd like to add to this discussion?
And it's clear tonight you're not looking for any approval.
No, I think we're not looking for any approvals. We'll wait until we can have a full presentation. I guess the question that we would have is a number of alternatives have been presented. One is relocating the building back to its original location, landscaping, possibly lowering the wall of the west building elevation, and to kind of reduce the scale, different locations for plantings and that sort of thing. So I think from our perspective, if the city council has any direct input into the evaluations that we're considering or that we're working on, it would be important for you to give those to us tonight so that we can have those for the May 12th meeting.
Alternatives in addition to the two that are shown here.
From a locational standpoint, and one has a building 50 feet from the road, the other one has a building 150 feet, what is it, there could be 100 different alternatives between those two distances. We're trying to minimize the amount of work so that we can come back to the city council and say, if we move it here, it's 200,000 or whatever. If it stays here, it's X.
Well, that's what, in walking the site earlier this week, I was surprised at the current plan location, how little room there is for trees between there and the road. Excuse me, which, landscaping the block, it's going to be very difficult to get one row of trees, if any. And so, looking at the originally planned location, the question that I would have is, does it have to be as far back as the original planned location? And if we look at 2 or 3 rows of trees, what's that distance as opposed to moving it all the way back? I met with 2 of the residents right across the street, and I know one prefers to move it all the way to the back of the property, and I'd like to understand the ramifications of doing that. And in any of the alternatives, how does that look from a future expansion standpoint? Are we taking more cost down the road, or are we putting more cost up front? How does that play out, in terms of the alternatives?
Other comments?
I guess I too walked the property, and one of the, I guess, potential assists, if you will, to minimizing the view of the building could potentially include some landscaping on the residence property on the west side of the road. So I'd like to see that as part of the evaluation. And again, the perspective that I was given was the sight line to the building, and so bringing the trees closer to the residents also helps, reduce that roof line visibility.
There's also discussion of a fence, potential of a fence, be it on the homeowner's property side or on the side of the Public Works facility. I know we have a city ordinance that minimizes, or maximizes, I guess, the height, whichever way you look at it. Maximum height is 4 feet. I'm assuming that we could find some way to accommodate a higher fence if that was something that would be helpful.
I think we've all commented that we've all been out to the site, and it's instructive to stand in the driveway of the individual homes and avail yourself of the perspective that they would have, those homeowners would have. And I think I speak for all of us that this is a 20, 30, 40-year decision, and it needs to be done thoughtfully, which of course is the process underway now. But I think it needs to also keep in mind that whatever we do here is going to be here for a long time. And so with that perspective, the cost involved has to be weighed against the long-term nature of this asset. And again, we don't want to be doing something that's short-sighted.
One other aspect of it, and I know it's possible, but if you can have it done for the next meeting, I think it might be helpful, is to have a computer-generated image of what it looks like from someone standing on the road. And what I'm trying to understand, and again, this was as a result of speaking with the neighbors across the street, is the perspective of the facility as you move it back. It raises up in height. There's one thought that having it closer to the road means it's lower, quicker potential for trees to grow and cover it up. Moving it back, there's more trees. This is the other perspective. Moving it back, there's potential for more trees in between there, and you're looking through the trees at a higher facility. I honestly don't know which one is better, but if there's a way to generate a perspective to help us to understand that, it would be helpful.
Yeah, Councilmember Crowley, we had talked about a couple of things. One is just a rendering, but we also talked about sections, which kind of lay out the elevations, from the street and going across, because the building is higher towards the back of the site. So
That would accomplish what Jim is after, would it not? Yeah.
And then there was another request, which I happen to agree, I definitely agree with, said, let's not paint it blue. have a plan, or at least discuss what the plans are for painting it, hopefully in earth tones of some sort.
To make that note. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What are the staff's preferences here? I mean, is there any issue with usability of the site, moving it from one place to another? What do you guys want to see?
Councilmember Pavelko, Ann, if you don't mind. I think let me just say a couple of things. I think we're certainly aware of the cost considerations. And as the mayor's indicated, this is a long-term decision, so cost obviously needs to be a factor, but it may not be the driving factor. I think from our perspective, I think there's a midway point between the current location and the location where it was originally proposed. And so our goal, I think, would be to try to minimize the impact to the neighbors, while making the site as usable as possible. I mean, just from my perspective, we purchased 10 acres. This is kind of the long-term decision for us, and to move it back 150 feet or whatever it is, while it provides more open space in the front, it does use usable space for the Public Works facility in 20 years or 30 years whenever we need it. So I think there's a balance, and when we come back to the City Council, we're going to present everything that's listed and talk about what that balance could be.
There was one other item, can I point at the, so walking the properties, so there's one property right here that has a direct view. Would it be possible to speak with Hartman's about, can we use some of the trees allocated to our landscaping to potentially block that view, but it would be in the corner of their property?
Councilmember Crowley, we will have that discussion. We may have already had that discussion with them.
Thank you.
And it needs to be obviously more than just a discussion. If we were to go that route, we'd have to have some assurance that the trees would stay, or we'd have responsibility, or some kind of easement arrangement.
Correct.
Right.
But it is private property,
Yeah.
and so they ultimately...
I just have one comment. I guess the reason that I'm having troubles with trying to figure out what I think is the best is because if we move the building, let's say it's $100,000, to me, we don't really get a value out of that $100,000. I'd rather see the $100,000 be put, if we're going to spend an extra $100,000, it should be put in the building for, more space or, something usable. Moving it on the site, it's nice to do, but it's not really necessary, I guess. So I guess, again, we'll have to weigh how much it is to what we're getting, but it seems to me if we're going to spend, more money and be over budget, I want to have that money go into the building so it's something usable, I think. But
I don't know, Joe, if you've had a chance to stand in that driveway,
Yep.
those 4 driveways. I go back to my comment. I initially, we made a decision, we approved it, let's get on with it. But having stood on and seen the perspective that would present itself to the road, I'm now torn, candidly, and I go back to my comment about doing the right thing. How are we going to feel 5 years down the road? How are we going to feel 6 months after this building is built if we're driving by and we see a big blue blob? It won't be blue now that Jim has spoken up, but, and I'm admittedly, I'm exaggerating the negatives here, I think, but it's going to be there for a long time, and it better be done. We better make the strategic decision we can, and that might mean 100,000, it might mean 200,000, it might mean moving the building back 150 feet, or to the 150-foot line, or maybe it's 75 feet, or some of the combination of, Jim talked about trees, but planting a row of trees along that berm on the east side of Rolling Acres, or Bavaria Road, it's hard to see how that would accomplish what I think the objective is that we're trying to accomplish, and that's to shield the building. Now, pine trees grow, and it's 6 feet 1 year, and 2 years later it's 10 feet or whatever it is. They grow like weeds, but Again, I think this is not just as simple a decision as saying, well, we can save 300,000 or 200,000 by not moving the building. I think as it is reflected in the comments here, I hope that people understand this is troubling really all of us. It's not an easy decision, and I think we can benefit from the work that you're going to do over the next couple of weeks, then we can have a much fuller discussion, productive discussion at the next council meeting.
And then one other question, Don, will we have something on noise levels and the difference between right on the road versus 150 feet back? Because to me, that would be another big issue that the residents would have when they're sitting outside grilling.
Councilmember Pavelko, we have not, other than kind of our operational noise, which would be trucks backing up or something like that, we've not considered kind of the road noise per se. I mean, the traffic on Bavaria in the morning and in the evenings is substantial compared to anything that we would generate. But it's a good question. If the council wants us to analyze the noise piece, we certainly can do that. There will be a cost involved with that.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not talking about noise on the road, but just, from trucks backing up and doing normal everyday truck work stuff.
And do you have any idea how that could even be analyzed? I mean, it's not a continuous, so it's occasional noise. I guess I don't really have a good feel for that.
Yes, Mayor and City Council members, I guess we could look at, kind of our operations from maybe a seasonal perspective. Generally the most noise, I guess, I would foresee is snow removal, where we have to dump snow. Otherwise, most of that noise will be towards the east of the building, any type of activity, or within the building itself.
And that's true of either location, is it not?
Correct. The salt storage facility won't be located here right at this point in time, so we won't have any of that noise generation from filling up vehicles. So there will be, from an operations perspective, the snow removal, bringing snow from downtown or wherever we're hauling it from and placing it on the site would probably be the most noise generation from an operations perspective.
Perhaps, too, it might be interesting just to check with the Hartmans, because obviously they have large trucks backing up, doing a number of the similar types of activity, and they've been there for ages. So, again, my guess is there'd be a very similar type of continuation of that type of noise, but that might be another way to look at that, too.
How would you characterize the noise in a public works facility, the predominant impact? Is it the trucks backing up, the actual function of the truck dumping the snow as you suggested, or what?
Yeah,
Most of the work is done inside the building.
correct, or they're out in the field. So when the trucks back up, there is a beeper on them. But in the normal daily routine, they're going to come in and through the building.
In a continuous circle.
So it would be, it'd be pretty much contained. Where we will run into where you would be able to hear that noise would be the backing up to dump the snow and then the banging of the box. But that would be located as far back as we can get on the site when that does occur. So we're going to be back, depending upon where the building is located, behind either location.
Joe, would you be satisfied if Ann gives this some additional thought? You would maybe out of the blue here with this question, but when we have the conversation in 2 weeks' time, if you could address that in a little more formal way.
Sure.
And am I correct that while they're backing, they're going to be facing, the rear of the truck will be facing the east most of the time as opposed to west? And if it was west, the building would be blocking it. So the noise is projected behind the vehicle.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess I don't want, some big formal $20,000 study. I just want some professional opinion that, the residents won't be up late at night with the trucks backing up or whatever they're doing.
A professional opinion beyond Ann?
No,
Ann is okay?
yeah.
Anything else
Yeah, just on this topic or other
on
topic?
this topic?
Nothing.
All right, that's almost concludes the agenda. Reports of council members?
Mayor, I just had one other comment. In regards to, we had mentioned the Johnson property earlier in the fire department training there tonight. Open invitation to the city council, if you're interested to see how they do live training. They're going to start tonight at 7:10. So with all of our fire chiefs will be there, as well as our volunteer firefighters, and they'd be happy to kind of show you what they do from a training perspective in a building. So I encourage you to walk over if you want.
We're not watching the clock, but that's 15 minutes from now, about.
Are they actually lighting a fire?
Councilmember Pavelko, there will not be any live burning. So what they're talking about is really search and rescue, because rarely do they have an opportunity to work inside a structure like this. So what they'll do is they'll put smoke in the building so you can't see and go in and try to find people. And this is an interesting place because it is so old and the basement is extremely confined. So good opportunity for our firefighters to train.
Any other report?
That's it.
Council members?
No report.
I guess I have one thing to report. As we've probably heard, there's the petition going around for the reverse referendum, and I did sign the reverse referendum, so I wanted to let you know that I
signed the
that.
petition.
Signed the petition, correct. To me, this really isn't that big of a deal. My campaign slogan when I first ran was, "It's your voice, our Victoria," and I'm just feel like I have to follow through with that and sign it, and hopefully if there's enough signatures, we'll let the people decide on the projects and the funding, and I don't think that's anything that we should be scared about, or I think it's something that we should embrace, and I think it's a good thing. So I do have a petition here that's blank, and I guess I'd encourage all of you to sign it as well and show good faith to the voters that, if there is a petition, that you guys will let it happen and we won't do the lease revenue bonds.
You're suggesting that in good conscience, the council members who favor the
Capital.
cheaper financing approach sign the petition challenging that?
No, not challenging it. We're making sure that the people
Challenging.
get the voices heard.
Without the
so that-
petition, we would proceed. With the petition, there's another step that's involved.
That is correct, but
More cost.
possibly.
Okay.
No,
But-
more cost to go down this process.
And so what's wrong with giving the residents the ability to vote on their future, the people who are going to be paying for it for the next 20 years? I mean, I just don't see what's wrong with that. If this is a great project, we should have no problem letting people vote on it.
The implication of the process you're advocating is that we have not done our fiduciary responsibility. That's my issue.
I've said for months, anytime this topic comes up, the five of us were elected to make these decisions, and I candidly think we're acting in the best interests of the residents, and if some number of residents objects, well, that's democracy, and that's certainly their right. But that doesn't mean we have to change what is our statutory responsibility. 3 votes allows us to proceed. Okay, that's my opinion.
Yeah, well.
Do you have a copy of the petition?
Yep.
Could you read it?
Sure. Let's see. Well, here's what it looks like.
Okay.
It says, "We, the undersigned citizens of the City of Victoria, Minnesota, do hereby petition for the city to hold an election to allow voters to approve or reject the proposed issuance of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $5,615,000 in order to finance certain capital improvements described in the capital improvement plan as set forth in resolution number 14-27 adopted by the Victoria City Council on April 14th, 2014.
If that petition has a sufficient number of signatures, and we were to hold a referendum, and the referendum were to lose, what would you suggest the course of action that the city would take?
I'd have to make sure that we take a good, hard look at what we're doing, if a majority of our people don't want it.
Good hard look at what we're doing when the buildings will be under construction.
So that,
By August 15th, we're going to start construction.
You've already awarded bids.
and we can slow those down. I mean, I don't see, if we know we're going to have a
Okay.
referendum,
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I ask the reporter, could you please read back the council member's exact words in how he phrased what he wants us, the reason for signing this?
So I don't think we're verbatim minutes, so we have to check the recording, but I just summarized. So the way I summarized it was, he feels like he has to, Councilmember Buffalo stated he feels like he has to sign the petition, let the people decide the projects and the funding, and that is nothing that the council should be scared about. You don't have to say he has a copy of the petition available for the council should they want to sign it. He has no problem letting the citizens vote on it.
So what I was looking for is the verbiage that he used as a reason why we should consider that. I wish we had the exact words, because I categorically, wholeheartedly disagree with you, specifically with the verbiage that you used. I can't say anymore. I completely disagree with your approach to this. It's
Okay.
your right, but I disagree with it completely.
And we go back, for months since this project was first initiated. It's at every step along the way, we've either agreed to proceed by 4 votes or 5 votes, and that's all that's required. I mean, we were elected to make these decisions in my view anyway. This is a representative democracy. It's not a democracy. We don't take every tough issue. Why don't we take the location of the Public Works facility to the voters? I mean, that's just, again, Joe, I respect your opinion, but as Jim said, I fundamentally disagree. We were elected to make these decisions, and the recourse that people have is to vote us out of office if they object to our decisions. I happen to think people are going to be thrilled to death when both these buildings open, and we finance them in the cheapest possible way. And 2 months, 6 months, 5 years from today, we're all going to be very proud of the decision we made, and not gone to a referendum, not gone to a referendum, which if it were to be defeated, and I don't think it would be, but if it were, we're going to fund the building with the lease revenue bonds, and that's what, $50,000 more a year? $40,000 more a year?
Yeah, Mayor, the number that we've been using based on the debt that the Councilmember Pavelko mentioned, there's about a $600,000 difference between, over the term of the
Over the term.
bonds, so it's, 20 years, so it's $40,000 to $50,000.
$40,000 a year, so,
And by doing this, we're also eliminating a safety hazard potential liability from affecting our employees and those that make use of all these facilities, which is the main reason we started down this process in the first place. I have to go back over 4 years ago. My first introduction to the council was when I was on the Business Development Committee with former council member Kim Roden. And I was actually kind of aghast at the time in the way she put this, but I was curious about how to get something approved and how to go forward with it, and her response was 3 votes. That's all you need, 3 votes. And that kind of became, I'll say, somewhat a humorous response. And we'd like to do that, 3 votes. So that's what it comes down to, Joe. And I'm sorry you don't have 3 votes, or at least you don't have my vote. And in the end, Kim is right.
yeah,
That's all
and
it takes.
I agree, I understand how to count, but the problem here is that if we go to a referendum and the majority of the voters here, the taxpayers, say that they don't want it, you're going to fine us, or you're going to penalize us by an extra $50,000. And to me, that is so fundamentally wrong that it's not right.
What's fundamentally wrong is,
Charging $50,000 extra for something that people don't want.
what's fundamentally, I think, dishonest is to encourage people to sign a referendum knowing that 2 buildings are under construction, knowing that it's been the stated preference of this council for months, if not at least a year, maybe 2 years, that we're going to build the buildings and we're going to build the buildings. And we either finance them with cash or 2 forms of debt. We've proposed the cheapest form of debt, and if anyone wants to sign that petition, feel free. But know full well that, at least my vote is, we're going to go forward, and I'm going to vote to adopt a more expensive financing vehicle, because some residents either didn't understand what they were signing, or they were misled, or people have another agenda.
This is a representative democracy, and we are elected to make decisions on behalf of our constituents with the understanding and desire of the constituents in mind. But as a result of this, we also have information that not necessarily is available to everyone, and we've taken time to study it. And given that responsibility and obligation as an elected official, I find it very challenging to not move forward with this, given the work environment of these 2 facilities. I mean, I personally have walked into this facility here, and you can smell fumes when you walk in the front door. You know, I don't want my family in that. I don't want employees working on that. I don't want voters having to come into something like that. Now, if you move that to the Public Works facility, they're not even allowed inside the building from an office standpoint because of the hazardous conditions in there. You know, I look at it, and if I was not in this council as a voter listening to you, I would be laughing at you saying, are you nuts? We have to have a facility or facilities in place that represent a place to work. We don't have those today. And that is irresponsible as a council member to not fix that problem. So I think we have a responsibility to allow this to occur. I think you have a responsibility as a council member to provide a decent place to work for the employees of this city. And I think you're abrogating your responsibility by taking this approach. And we agree to disagree.
One of the first activities nearly 4 years ago when I joined the council was strategic planning session. And during that, we outlined the needs of the city. And I don't mean wants, I mean needs. And on that strategic plan was a new city hall and a new public works building. And I think all the reasons for that need have been pretty well documented. And so, you know, the suggestion that this was either ill-conceived or rushed through or in some way done in secrecy, when every piece of this process has been very open, it's at best a misrepresentation. And I think the use of the word fear is pretty offensive, that we would fear something. I think what we're doing here is our duty, and you don't have my vote, and I won't be signing the petition. And I do think it's critically important that everyone understand that failure to, or the referendum means, passing the referendum would mean an additional $600,000 in expense to build the buildings. It just makes the project more expensive, and it adds no value. You talk about adding value of $100,000 to move a building to make it more palatable to the people who are directly affected by it, but you don't blink at adding $600,000 to it with zero value to anybody.
I won't be voting for that, so I won't be adding anything. But those statements there, you're bullying the taxpayers. That if you exercise your right, you're going to get $650,000 in your tax bill.
And
to
who's
me, that's
responsible
wrong.
for that?
Well, there's 5 people that make that decision in the city, and they're sitting right
And you're
here.
assuming you have a majority. I personally don't think you do.
No, I'm not going to have a majority, but I'm not.
No, I mean in terms of a potential referendum. You're saying you represent the taxpayers.
You know, and sometimes you just have to do what you feel is right. And, I mean, we both Jim and Tom have talked about the current condition and how long we've endured that, the city's endured that. over the course of the many months that we've studied this thing, I think Jim touched on it, there are 5, I think, reasonably sound business people with a world of experience in different disciplines who've studied this issue for months and have come to the reasonable conclusion in our mind that the course of action we're embarking on is the correct course of action.
Actually, there are 7 because this started under Mayor Toom.
Actually, there are 7. It started under her. And I guess I'd ask, what's the objection to the building? Well, is it going to raise our taxes? To the contrary, anybody who's looked at our your tax bill for 2014, the median value home taxes have gone down. 4 of the last 5 years, we've reduced the tax levy in this city. So could taxes be lower if we don't bond for whatever we're going to bond for the building? Yeah, they could be lower, but how low is low? You have a responsibility. I think we have a responsibility to do the mature thing, the responsible thing, and that's to allow reasonable facilities for our employees to work in, and do it in a strategic way that we're making a decision that 50 years from today, 40 years from today, the buildings will still be serving this city. And we look back at a couple of $100,000 or whatever the difference is in the cost and say, boy, it was worthwhile. I just know, I've been in the real estate business for 30 years. When you're talking about budgeting and you're looking at plans, it's all theoretical. The day our citizens we open that building, especially the new city hall, when you walk into that new building on the lake that represents the citizens of this community, people are going to be filled with pride at what we've done. You disagree with me if you choose, but if you sign that petition, know that the cost is going to go up, because we are funding this building. You just heard, I think you just heard 3 strong voices in support, and that's what it takes to fund the building. We will fund the building one way or the other. Our preference is to do it with the cheaper way, but if must be, we will fund it with the lease revenue bond.
Holly, how many houses at the monthly report that you send out, number of houses that are in process, under construction? I'm trying to recall, it was either high 3s, 400, something like that?
Councilmember Crowley, are you asking for the number of building permits we've issued to date?
No,
or?
it's the combination, so you've got those that have been approved,
Oh.
those that have been permitted, in process, that type of thing.
I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head either, but we've approved about 300 lots over the past year and have more in process.
So this comes to capacity of what we have with the facilities, and another reason why we've moved forward with this, that we are experiencing primarily as a result of approving the extension of the sewer to the southern section of town, tremendous growth in the housing area of our community. And this again comes back into the justification of why we're building these facilities and going into the processes that are needed to provide the services that the city expects. Those were part of Don's cost justification. So not going forward with these buildings is also hindering our ability to support the growth of the city.
Any other comments? Someone want to make a motion? We'll close the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn.